The crystal chandelier cast elegant shadows across Mom's dining room as she served another helping of disappointment with the roasted chicken. I'd flown in from Vienna for what I'd hoped would be a quiet family dinner, but Mom had other plans. Daniel's firm just landed the Morrison account, she announced proudly, gesturing toward my older brother with the same reverence she might reserve for visiting royalty. Corporate law, now that's a real career. Prestige, recognition, the kind of work that matters. Daniel preened under her attention, adjusting his Armani tie. It's a 7-figure retainer, actually. Corporate mergers and acquisitions. Real high-level stuff. I continued cutting my chicken, letting the familiar sting of comparison wash over me. For the past 6 years, every family gathering had followed the same script. Daniel's law career represented success and ambition, while my government job was treated as a consolation prize for someone who couldn't hack it in the real world. Maya should consider going back to school, Mom continued, not bothering to lower her voice as if I weren't sitting right there. Get an MBA, maybe try corporate consulting. These government positions, well, they're fine for people who want job security over achievement. What she didn't know was that my government position was Regional Security Director for Central European Embassy Operations. I coordinated security protocols for 6 different diplomatic missions, managed counterintelligence operations, and maintained security clearance that took the FBI 18 months to approve. But to Mom, I was just another bureaucrat shuffling papers in some faceless office building. The problem with government work, she said, warming to her favorite topic, is that there's no real accountability. No pressure. No consequences for mediocrity. No consequences. Last month, I'd coordinated the security response when intelligence indicated a potential terrorist threat against our embassy in Prague. I'd worked 96 hours straight, coordinating with local law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and military assets across 3 countries. But sure, no consequences for mediocrity. Maya's always been content with simpler aspirations, Mom explained to Daniel's new girlfriend Sarah, who was hearing the family dynamics for the first time. Some people are just more comfortable in supporting roles. Supporting roles. I almost laughed. 2 weeks ago, I'd briefed the Secretary of State on security vulnerabilities across Eastern Europe. Last month, I'd personally designed the security protocol for a visit from the German Chancellor. But here in Mom's dining room, I was the family underachiever who'd settled for less. Daniel jumped in with his usual condescending concern. Maya, you know I've got connections in corporate security consulting. Real private sector work. You could probably leverage your government experience into something more substantial. That's thoughtful of you, I replied diplomatically, the same tone I used when managing delicate international situations. What they didn't understand was that I'd turned down 3 private sector offers in the past 2 years, all paying significantly more than Daniel's law firm's salary. Corporate security consulting didn't interest me because it lacked the complexity and stakes of diplomatic security work. Managing corporate executive protection was child's play compared to coordinating multi-agency responses to international security threats. But explaining that would require them to acknowledge that my work might actually be important, which contradicted 6 years of established family narrative. The thing about real success, Mom continued, is that it's visible. Daniel's name is on law firm letterhead. He has business cards that mean something. Maya. Well, we don't even really know what she does all day. They didn't know because they'd never asked. Every time I'd tried to explain my work, the conversation got redirected to Daniel's latest case or Mom's social activities. 6 years of careful deflection had left them genuinely ignorant about my actual career. What they especially didn't know was that Mom's beloved social life, her embassy events, diplomatic receptions, and international cultural gatherings, all took place under security protocols that I personally designed and supervised. For 3 years, Mom had been leveraging her connection to me to gain access to embassy social events. She'd parlayed her daughter in government work into invitations to diplomatic receptions, cultural exhibitions, and international networking events that she absolutely loved attending. Her social calendar was packed with embassy galas and diplomatic dinners that made her the envy of her country club friends. But she'd been careful to downplay exactly which daughter worked in government. To her social circle, I was Maya, who has some kind of administrative position with international affairs. The real credit for her access always went to Daniel's connections, or her own international interests. The irony was brutal. I provided her social access while she publicly dismissed my career as meaningless. Speaking of which, Mom said, turning to me with that particular smile she reserved for assignments, the Austrian embassy is having their cultural gala next month. I mentioned to the ambassador's wife that I'd love to attend. You could probably arrange something through your office connections. Office connections. The Austrian ambassador was someone I briefed personally on security matters every 2 weeks. His wife knew me as the person who designed the security protocols that kept their family safe during a particularly tense period 6 months ago. But to Mom, I was just someone who might be able to pull strings for social invitations. I'll see what I can do, I said carefully. Wonderful. These diplomatic events are such excellent networking opportunities. Daniel, you should come too. International law connections could be valuable for your practice. Daniel nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. Getting FaceTime with ambassadors and cultural attaches could open doors for the firm. I watched them plan their strategic networking at events that existed under my security oversight, while simultaneously dismissing the career that made their access possible. My secure phone buzzed, the classified one, not my personal device. Priority message from the Embassy Security Command Center in Vienna. I glanced at the message and felt my blood chill. Intelligence intercept indicating possible security breach at the Austrian embassy. The same embassy where Mom wanted to attend next month's gala. The same building where I maintained comprehensive security oversight. Excuse me, I said, standing from the table. I need to take this call. See. Mom said to Sarah. No boundaries between work and personal life. This is exactly what I mean about government jobs. They consume your whole existence for very little return. I stepped into Dad's study and activated secure communication protocols. Within minutes, I was connected to a multi-agency briefing involving FBI counterintelligence, embassy security, and Austrian law enforcement. The situation was serious but contained. A low-level embassy employee had been flagged for potential compromise by foreign intelligence services. Nothing immediately dangerous, but it required comprehensive security review and possible personnel changes. More importantly for tonight's dinner conversation, it required immediate review of all embassy access lists and social clearances. I pulled up the diplomatic social access database on my secure tablet. Mom's social pass was right there. Patricia Chin Martinez, Social Guest Access Level 2, sponsored by Director M. Martinez, valid through December 2024. Her entire social calendar for the next 6 months depended on security clearances that I personally maintained. The embassy galas, cultural events, diplomatic receptions, all of it happened under my security oversight, using access privileges that I had approved and could revoke. I stared at her profile in the system. 3 years of embassy events. Dozens of diplomatic receptions. Cultural galas that she'd leveraged into social status among her peers. All of it made possible by the meaningless government job she loved to dismiss. My finger hovered over the access revocation option. The security breach required comprehensive review of all access privileges anyway. Standard protocol was to temporarily suspend non-essential access until the investigation concluded. Mom's social pass would be automatically flagged for review. But I could also expedite that review. Make it permanent. I returned to dinner 20 minutes later to find Mom still lecturing about career choices. The private sector teaches you about real accountability. Government workers never learn what genuine pressure feels like. How did your call go? Daniel asked with barely concealed impatience. Security review. Some diplomatic access privileges need to be adjusted. Mom perked up. Nothing that would affect the Austrian gala, I hope? I met her eyes across the table. Actually, there's been a security policy change. All non-essential social access is being restricted pending investigation. Non-essential. Mom's voice sharpened. Surely my access wouldn't be considered non-essential. All civilian social passes are being reviewed, Mom. It's standard protocol during security assessments. But you can override that, can't you? I mean, you work there. The assumption in her voice was stunning. She'd spent the entire dinner dismissing my work as meaningless bureaucracy, then immediately expected me to use my position to grant her special privileges. I don't have override authority for security protocols, I said truthfully. As regional security director, I had to follow the same security procedures I'd helped design. Then who does? Can you talk to them? Explain that I'm family? Mom, security clearances don't work that way. Her face was reddening now. This is ridiculous. I've been attending these events for 3 years. The ambassador's wife knows me personally. The ambassador's wife knows you as someone who attends social functions. That's different from having security clearance for ongoing access. Daniel jumped in with his lawyer instincts. Maya, surely there's some appeals process. Some way to expedite Mom's clearance review. There is. It takes approximately 6 to 8 weeks and requires comprehensive background verification. Mom stared at me like I'd announced the end of the world. 6 to 8 weeks. The Austrian gala is in 4 weeks. The German cultural exhibition is next month. The French wine tasting is. I understand, Mom. But security protocols don't bend for social calendars. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in 6 years, Mom was confronting the reality that my meaningless government job had actual authority and consequences. This is absurd, she finally said. Can't you just fix this? Fix what? A legitimate security review. You know what I mean. I did know what she meant. She wanted me to abuse my security authority to protect her social calendar, using the same position she'd spent years calling unimportant. Mom, even if I wanted to circumvent security protocols, which I don't, doing so would end my career and potentially result in federal charges. Daniel's girlfriend Sarah looked confused. I'm sorry, what exactly is your job title? Regional Security Director for Central European Embassy Operations. The silence was deafening. Sarah continued, so you're responsible for what level of security decisions? 6 embassy locations, approximately 400 diplomatic staff, and all civilian access to diplomatic facilities and events. Mom's face had gone very pale. You're saying you control access to all the embassy events? I oversee the security protocols that determine access, yes. For how long? 3 years. The math was clearly hitting her. Every embassy gala, every diplomatic reception, every cultural event she'd attended, all under my security oversight. But you never said, when I asked you to arrange invitations. You asked me to use my office connections. I used my professional authority to ensure you had appropriate access. Daniel was staring at me like I'd revealed I was secretly royalty. Maya, are you telling us you've been personally approving Mom's access to embassy events for 3 years? Among other responsibilities, yes. Mom sank back in her chair. And now you're, what? Punishing me. I'm following standard security protocols during a legitimate review. This isn't personal, Mom. It's professional. But of course it felt personal. 6 years of dismissive comments about my career, delivered while she benefited from the access and authority that career provided. Over the following days, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Mom called repeatedly, asking for updates on her security review. Daniel stopped giving career advice and started asking careful questions about government security work. The Austrian embassy gala happened without her. So did the German cultural exhibition. Her country club friends noticed her absence from the diplomatic social circuit, and the questions were uncomfortable. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter from Mom requesting restoration of her embassy access. It was written in the careful, respectful tone of someone who'd finally understood that my work had real authority and consequences. But the letter also contained something I'd never received from her before: an acknowledgement that she'd misunderstood my career, and an apology for years of dismissive comments about government work. Her security clearance was eventually restored. The investigation concluded without finding any connection to her access. But the process took exactly 6 weeks, and she missed most of her favorite social events of the season. More importantly, she never again suggested that government jobs were for failures, or that I should consider real career options like Daniel's law practice. The irony wasn't lost on me. It took temporarily losing her social access for Mom to understand that my meaningless bureaucracy had been the foundation of her diplomatic social life for 3 years. But in the end, the lesson was valuable for both of us. She learned to respect work she didn't fully understand. And I learned that sometimes, consequences speak louder than explanations ever could. Daniel still practices corporate law, and he's quite good at it. But he doesn't lecture me about career choices anymore. And when people ask what his sister does for work, he gets the title exactly right.